Welcome, everybody. Pastor Tim Carscadden here on the Pipeline Report. We're so thankful you're with us today here on Monday, July 6, 2026. I'll be by myself today, soloing it. Zach is not feeling really well. He's a little under the weather, but he'll be okay. But I'm going to go ahead and take it today by myself. And I call in today's title, Dire Straits, because we're in that prophetic season for 3 weeks. There's a warning from the Lord from the 17th Tammuz, which was last week, to the 9th of Av, which is coming up. This is the fourth and fifth month on the Hebraic calendar. Some of the worst events that have ever happened in the earth have happened during that 3 week period. So we want to talk about that and pray into that for safety as we go through the dire straits and narrow straits. Did my podcast on the day. I'll go in deep detail, so you can just check out my podcast and I'll talk about that and how the Strait of Hormuz right now is a picture of that, how it's hard to navigate through that. You have to go through the mines, you have to go through the enemy. But if you make it through, you carry your goods out. And that's a word from the Lord. And we'll speak about that this week on our podcast. But I wanted to just use that as a focus today. And we're also going to talk about the upcoming midterms as well, because what has happened in the recent weeks in a lot of these elections have determined that. So we're going to cover that, as well as the 250th anniversary of July 4th we did this weekend of America's anniversary. We want to celebrate that and give some insight from that. So welcome to the Pipeline Report. Well, thanks for joining us. So glad you're with us today as we come to you each Monday here at noon Central Time, just sharing what we believe, how to vet the news, how to hear what the Lord's saying through all the events that's going on in the world. We don't just want to be a news broadcast, but we do want to give you the news, but give it from a perspective of how God wants us to travel through it, navigate through it, understand how to listen properly in the spirit, and to watch what's going on in the earth concerning that. Now, this Pipeline Report, actually, it's our 6th anniversary, would have been on July 4, which would have been Saturday. Started this ministry back then. The Lord gave me a dream about praying for the office of president and then get it down the pipeline. In other words, let other people pray into that down the pipeline. That's kind of the vision. We went to Mount Rushmore. If you all remember that, some of you have been with us for 6 years. We went to Mount Rushmore right there in the middle of COVID, and we prayed there. We broadcast from there. We did everything we could to start launching this ministry that you're watching here on every Monday at 12 noon. And it was amazing, the journey we've been on. We prayed for President Trump's first term all the way through it. Then we had to pray through President Biden's term, 4 years, and then now we're praying again for President Trump's second term. The Lord didn't say just pray for the people you like, the presidents you like, pray for the office of president, and that's this ministry. So we try to give you information, prophetic as well as natural information, on how to pray properly. God never said that we would like who's in the office. He just asked us to pray according to his word, Romans 13, as well as in Timothy, it talks about this as well. Paul tells us to pray for our leaders, that they would be used of the Lord. Remember, God used Nebuchadnezzar to shelter Israel during their time of captivity in Babylon. And he called him in Jeremiah, he said, he's my servant. So God uses people that you would never think he would use in order to bring about his purpose in the earth. That we have to put our trust in. And that's going to be a kind of a topic today as well. We just trust the Lord no matter what it looks like in the natural. Now, I said this on my podcast. I can't remember if I said it last week or on the pipeline, but as we saw this past weekend, another week, I should say, another Marxist won a primary out in Colorado this time, and dethroned a long-term Democrat that had been in Congress for a while. And I want to give a little prophetic insight. I think is important for us to understand what's going to. Don't be so upset that these Marxist communists are beginning to win these primaries. New York was the big one. We're seeing it in other states as well. There's one up for Michigan. Matter of fact, the race that's going in there for Senate, there was two Democrats and then one Marxist in the primary, I think in August, and one of the Democrats dropped out unexpectedly this past weekend, and now it's just two of them. They're trying to find a way to defeat the Marxists in that seat. So I want to say this. This is what I believe the Lord has shown me, because what we're seeing now is a better clarity. These Marxists that are winning these primaries, they are uprooting and dethroning long-term Democrats who've been in Congress for a long time. They're what we call the swamp. That's what President Trump gave them that term, and we've talked about draining the swamp, and that's what we've been praying into, that would be drained. Now, these Democrats that are being uprooted, they speak and say they're patriots. They speak and say they love America, but that is not what their policies do. That is not what they do in reality. So they mislead their constituents in their districts. Oh, I'm a pro-American, I'm this and all that. And they're really not. Their policies and their actions are the very thing that's been deteriorating the fiber of our republic and our democracy. And now they're being uprooted. I want to say this, the districts that these are happening in, they're fully Democratic districts. No Republican was ever going to win there. So that tells you that no Republican was ever going to uproot them. Our hope was that was some moderate Democrat would come along that really was a patriot and it did love the country, but that ain't happening either. I had to use the word ain't, but that, you understand what I'm saying. And so God, in his infinite wisdom, way beyond what you and I could even think or imagine, is allowing the enemy to devour the enemy. And he's allowing the exposure of these cloaked American leaders, I call them that, because they were not voting for American values and our value of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, et cetera. And so God is dethroning them by using the enemy who is obvious to dethrone them. These Marxist communists that are being allowed, that are winning these primaries are very clear. They hate America. They hate our Constitution. They hate our borders. They want them wide open. They want our prisons taken away. They want immigration to be free. They want ICE abolished. This is what they want. So now we know what we're dealing with. We have an open devil that is declaring what they believe. Whereas before, we had a devil that was hiding. He was deceiving through these instruments in the Congress and Senate. So now they're gone. See ya. They're removed. And the peace that I got from this was the Lord said, be assured that they will not prevail. Okay, so that's very important because otherwise I thought, well, we could head that direction. And I think President Trump had dealt with that this weekend, this past weekend, on his speeches about communism. So we're going to touch this because Mandami and Bernie Sanders and all these communists that are out there, we got to stop calling them liberals. They're not liberals. It's an insult to what real liberals are. Liberals in the past, many years ago, were just people that had open minds and they were open to new ideas and differences. And these people are not open to new ideas. They have their own ideas that they think the way America should be reshaped. Call them Marxists and communists. Call them what they are, socialists. It would be a kind word for them. If you want to be kind to them, call them socialists. Okay. If you want to be truthful, call them Marxist communists. That's what you need to call them. And their history proves that. Okay. Bernie Sanders proved he loved Russia. He went there for his honeymoon. Okay. And that was in the worst era of communism that there was. And he loved it then. Okay, and he's the one that's behind all these candidates. He's promoting them. Okay, so here we go. So President Trump in his speeches, let me pull this up. he spoke some things that are about the communism I think we need to listen to. I think it's very important for this hour.
Country won't happen.
We'll start it over.
America will never be a communist country. Won't happen. Communism is a loser, and it always will be. The communist system is the opposite of the American system, and the communist system has never worked. Our warriors did not fight communism on battlefields across the world, only to have that menace rear its ugly head right back here in America. We're not going to let it happen. We like to stop a threat like that immediately and before it begins. It's like a cancer. You got to cut it out. You got to cut it out fast.
Now, I think that's a good statement. You have to cut it out. And so any surgeon will tell you this is dealing with cancer. You need to know where it is. We had cancers that were hiding. They were hiding in Congress and hiding in the Senate. And now those are gone. And now we have an open cancer that's fully manifesting, which more clearly we'll be able to deal with. Okay. Just want to say that. I know you're being awful hard today, Pastor. I'm just telling what the prophetic insight we have on this. Okay. And obviously working and going to Congress and seeing it with myself, my own eyes, walking in their offices and seeing it for myself. So here you go. You have this. And I think what he said there, the price that's been paid, the fact that many of us, families that are in America, some probably watching here, their fathers and grandfathers fought in wars against communism, Korea, Vietnam, trying to stop the spread of it. And some of us lost family members during that war. And to think that the deaths that they had trying to stop that from spreading to America is now on our shores. It's almost disgusting. So as we look at this, we have to say, God, you know what's best in the situation, and we ask you to guide us through this process of dealing with this as it manifests. So let me play another clip that President Trump used about the communists, which I think is very important as we listen to the rationale that he talks about.
We approach this magnificent anniversary. We see our American identity under a renewed attack, a generation after we fought and won the Cold War against the menace of communism. There is now a resurgence of the communist menace in our land, including from newcomers to our country who embrace ideas totally opposed to our way of life and our great success. These are not mere political disagreements like differences over taxes or regulations. Communism is a mortal threat to American liberty. It is the greatest threat to our country, including World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, or even 9/11. We're not going to let this happen to us. Believe me, we're not letting it happen. You can be loyal to Karl Marx, or you can be loyal to America. You can be a communist, or you can be a patriot. You cannot be both.
And I just want to celebrate that statement right there. You cannot be both, one way or the other. And I think about Derek Prince back when I used to listen to him in the 70s and 80s. He was one of the first leaders I ever heard talk about in the body of Christ, that the difference between a patriot and a nationalist. And a patriot is one who says God is first in your nation. Look, they're trying to call us Christian nationalists. Do not embrace that term. I've been called that. Others we know have been called that. And I didn't know I didn't know what it was when I was being called it. Some media stuff tagged me with this. I didn't even know what that was. I had to go Google, find out what this is a couple years ago. And so now I know what it's about. And you got to understand, if we look back at how nationalism starts, it's usually innocent. It actually has somewhat of a good motive. It's trying to not allow another ideology, a tyranny, to come into a nation. Look at Nazi Germany. They had been under the tyranny of the sanctions from World War I, economically crippled, socially crippled because of the sanctions were way too harsh on them. So comes along this guy named Adolf Hitler, who who starts putting pride back in. Let's fight for the fatherland. He starts decreeing that, hey, this is a great country. We just got to rebuild it. And then it keeps pushing this ideology, and people are like, yeah, we've been mistreated, it's been unjust, so we got to fight. And so you start getting a synergy, a movement toward that. And the next thing you know, it's like we got to become stronger. And then you start breaking the rules about engagement of that the laws that came against them, all the sanctions. So they started building the military. We got to be strong, we got to be able to fight. And everybody, we don't want the enemy to take our country. And then all of a sudden the economy starts flowing, people start having money to pay their bills, and to have some niceties of life. And like, yeah, this is much better than being poor. And and you understand how insidious it was. And it grew and it grew and it grew until finally, it's like having a pet alligator. When it's a baby, it's kind of cute in that aquarium, but when it gets big, it'll kill you. That's kind of the thing. Grew up, and the next thing you know, he starts decreeing that the government is the god, and that we tell you what your rights are. We'll tell you what to think. We'll tell you how to do it. We'll control the media. We'll control. You understand how it grew? So it started with I think, a natural thing, which they needed. They needed to get their pride back. They needed to get hope again. They needed to get resources again. And I think this is what we're the Christian nationalist quote movement, if you want to call it that, is that, hey, we're tired of the liberals, we're tired of the communist Marxists taking this. We need to take our country back. Da, da, da. But they're forgetting that God has a purpose in it all, and that God is first. And when we supersede God in our country, we're no longer a patriot, we're a nationalist. And we have to keep our patriotism in check, that the kingdom of God. And so if man tells us to do something that's against the kingdom, we have to do what God says. That's what Peter and James said. He said, whether, when they were being told they couldn't talk about Jesus, he said, we will obey God rather than man. In that situation, that you do have to do that. So that's, to me, that's a real battleground of where we are. And America's exceptionalism, there is an exceptionalism to America, in the sense that we have core values that are in the kingdom and the word of God. And that is what we must remember. Our foundation is strong. I preached a sermon Sunday, a little out of character for me, more studying systematically about where America was, but it was a special holiday, so I wanted to speak to it. And I gave a study that showed that America's root movement, the grassroots movement, is toward family and happiness and the core values of America. That's where the movement is, grassroots wise. Do not listen to the media. The media has lied to us. That's something that we all know that has happened. That we have believed a lie. Let me play this little clip. This German coming here for the World Cup. They're coming here from the World Cup all around the world, and they're realizing that they've been lied to by the media about America. That they came here thinking we were criminals and we were racist and we hated everybody, and because that's what they hear over there. I've been there. I've been in Europe. I've watched their newscasts for hours. They have English speaking. They have translators too. And I've watched it. And I want to say this, in all my hours of watching media in Europe, I've never seen them interview a Republican or a conservative. They always interview Democrats and liberals and Marxist communists. That's their media. Only because of the internet, other people can listen to something different. But for the most part, that's what they hear. So when they came here, they're like, wow, it's not what they said. And there's statements all over the internet now. Look, we were lied to. And I think this is very interesting, because America didn't like roll the red carpet out in our cities and say, okay, if you're here for the World Cup, we're going to treat you extra special because you're here as a guest, and we're going to have special events for you. That's not what happened. We were just being America. And nothing out of character. When they walked into our restaurants, we were just kind to them, just like we'd be to anybody else. When they walked into our stores, we were kind to them, just like we would be anybody else. And they started noticing that, hey, these people are really nice. They're not crazy. They're not racist. They're not all these things that the media has told me. And that's a beautiful thing. And they interviewed this little German guy. And let me play this
Teddy
little clip.
Roosevelt and the legend of the
hold
Wild
on.
West.
This is another one. Let me get back to that. I'll get back to that here in a second. But he did. I want to play that. I'm sorry to be jumping around here. This is the one I want to play.
Sorry, sir.
It makes you
He's a German.
teary. Why? Why? Help us understand. Why is this so impactful to you?
Sebastian Krauts never imagined his trip to America would be so emotional.
Yeah. No, you're human. Happy tears.
In just a few weeks being here,
I fall in love with this country, and this was so emotional. I even cried in the stadium.
it's a huge departure from what he was expecting before traveling to follow the German soccer team in its World Cup run.
To be honest, I was a bit scared or had the fear to travel to the United States. News about shootings and criminals and that the country is not safe. Bob takes us home. It's great. America is great.
Sebastian met a group of strangers who offered him a ride to his hotel.
What is the best city?
Boston.
That's Bob Series and his family, New Englanders who showed a group of Germans that Boston is warmer than some might believe.
Bob, thank you. Love USA.
Enjoy your time in the U.S.
To me, I watched the video by myself maybe 40 times. I had tears in my eyes.
Sebastian was more upset about the prospect of leaving America than Germany being eliminated from the tournament. That kindness he experienced is also what many locals and transplants have lived as well.
I loved living here. I thought the people were always so kind.
People here are very polite.
The World Cup just made it easier for folks to see.
I certainly talk to a lot more strangers than I normally do.
And you think it's because of the World Cup?
I do.
Americans are not rude, Germans are not rude. If we are together, we can achieve great things.
Sebastian's going to be sticking around for a little longer. He's going to spend the 4th of July in Washington, D.C. Then he goes back home to Germany to his family and friends. He's going to be telling them all about our country. And as for Good Samaritan Bob, I spoke with him over the phone. He says that he's just trying to pay back all the kindness that he received when he traveled the world. And he agrees New England and Boston are actually a friendly place. Reporting from Boston, Oscar Margain.
Well, there you go. That's a miracle in itself right there about Boston. So we celebrate that. I saw here in Mississippi, a guy I don't know what happened. He lost his transportation or his ticket or something. And somebody in Mississippi literally drove him like 3 hours to his destination just to take him because he didn't have a ride. And that's just normal Americans, especially in the South. For you guys that live here, you know what I'm talking about. You guys don't live here, you need to experience it. It's an amazing experience, what goes on here. So again, this is our foundation. Our foundation was in faith. Our foundation was in the gospel. And they hear this stuff about us being racist, and we've always been racist because they have these ideas. I remember the 1619 project was they said in 1619 America was kind of established on slavery, et cetera, and that's who we were. There was two stories. There was slavery, obviously, in Jamestown at that time, but there are two stories. And Dave Barton does a teaching on this, and I think I pulled a clip of that. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, here we go. And I'll pull this up. And it is a talk about the difference between Jamestown and Plymouth. And it has to do with the slavery teachings that we all may have heard in college and or in school. And now this movement is trying to paint our nation as a racist nation. And it's just not true. We were probably one of the fastest nations in the world to get rid of slavery once we installed it. It's still active. There's over 40 million people, I think, in the world right now that are slaves through human trafficking, sex trafficking, et cetera. And nobody's saying anything about it now. They just want to keep remembering what we did 200 plus years ago. Okay, that's what they want to talk about. But here, let's bring some truth to this. I want to say that let's just bring some truth to this very topic that we're talking about, and this will help you. This is a good teaching by Dave.
The settlers come ashore in Jamestown, and as they come ashore, they land first on a place called Cape Henry. They land on Cape Henry, and before they come ashore and do anything permanent, they stop there on the shore where they land, they erect a cross, they kneel down, and they dedicate this land to the Lord Jesus Christ. Very openly did so as Christians. If you have any doubt about that, just go back and read their charter of 1606, the year before. It says that we're undertaking this endeavor, we're doing this, and this is what they said, because it tends to the glory of God's divine majesty and propagating the Christian religion, and such people as yet live in darkness and miserable ignorance of the true knowledge and worship of God. We're doing this because there are people who don't know Jesus, and they need to know Jesus, and we want to make sure and get the gospel to them. So this is what they say in their charter. This is what they did when they got ashore. They knelt down. There's no question they were professing evangelical Christians. No question about that at all. You see it in their documents. It's interesting. They were not biblical Christians. Now, can you be evangelical and not be biblical? Absolutely. We've got a lot of that in America right now. We'll talk about that more. But going back to these guys, who, if you look at the start of Jamestown, Jamestown has become fairly, I guess, popular. Most Americans are aware of it in recent years, particularly because of the 1619 Project. 1619 Project came out by the New York Times, created a curriculum. That curriculum is being used at schools in all 50 states. And they talk about Jamestown a lot because they say Jamestown is what epitomizes America. This is the beginning of America. This is the foundation. Everything flowed out from here. And as they point out, Jamestown had slavery. And so this is where racism came into America. This is where oppression of people came into America. This is where groups came in. And so this is what the 1619 Project talks about, is the impact of Jamestown in shaping America. America was shaped by Jamestown. Now, there's no question that Jamestown did have slavery, but it's not the way 1619 Project says. As a matter of fact, Jamestown was an anti-slavery colony for the first several decades. And there was a lot of things different from their narrative, but their narrative is this is what defines America. So Jamestown did have slavery, no question about it, but there's a lot more to the story than that. As a matter of fact, it gets even, I guess you could say, worse than that. I'm going to show you some things they also did. They're at least equally bad, not the least of which is that when they got here, they all came out of Europe. And all the governments in Europe at that time were kings and queens. They were monarchies. And because of that, it's a government-centric kind of system. You work for the king or queen. You don't have private property. They own it. If they don't like what you do, they'll take it and give it to somebody else. All the capital, all the means of production belong to the government, which by definition, that is socialism. And so these folks came out of socialistic systems. They lived and worked for the government. The government gave them back what they thought they should have. And this is the way this was just normal thinking for them. This is what they were all used to, all accustomed to. So they arrive here, and they're very pro-socialism. And that's evident when you see their interaction with native tribes, Indian tribes right at the beginning. They get here and they say, hey, the king sent us here. This is his land. The whole nation belongs to him. And he sent us here, and you're living on his land. You Native Americans, you're on the king's land. And he sent us here. And so we really need you to help feed us and supply us and give us the food we need. And so that's the request they put out. Now, significantly, the Indians were already friendly. They were already willing to do that. And so you'll find that for the first 2 years, the Indians really did supply them with so much. And they say, we need the food. And they say, sorry, pets, what we would call pets, dogs and cats, things like that, and ate his wife.
Yeah.
Now, as you can imagine, just go to work. Everything is twisted about this when you think the mindset. But these are evangelical Christians. These are professing Christians. We've come here to get people brought to Jesus Christ. They even kidnapped Pocahontas, who had been their friend helping them. They kidnapped her and say, hey, if you guys don't supply us food, who knows what's going to happen to Pocahontas? And so the whole thing about these people, they're elitist, they're socialistic, they're pro-slavery, they're big government, just so many things wrong about Jamestown, which is why it's easy to make a curriculum about that and say, this is what defines America. And again, it's being taught in all 50 states. And there's plenty about Jamestown to criticize. And so the 1619 Project, this is low-hanging fruit for them. But as I pointed out earlier, it is more than just 1619. We could call the other one the 1620 Project. And that 1620 Project is the Tale of Two Cities. Now, that group is what we call the Pilgrims. And the Pilgrims, interesting thing about them, and by the way, this is a painting of the picture that hangs in the U.S. Capitol. The original painting is for...
Now, I say it sounds familiar. I know they're not pro-slavery, but the elitist, the socialist, big government, it's cloaking itself. And so this was kind of our beginning, and now you're seeing sometimes a dog return to its vomit here, and that's what you're seeing. They're just twisting one part of that. Okay, let's keep listening. He talks about Plymouth here.
14 feet high, it's 20 feet wide. It is one of 8 pictures hanging in the rotunda of the Capitol. This is life size of the Pilgrims, essentially, a huge thing. And it shows them coming to America. And the interesting thing, virtually any picture you see of the Pilgrims, you will always find a Bible in that picture, because this is what defined them. They tried to be biblical. They were humans, and they made mistakes, and they goofed up, but they kept going back to the Bible. They would correct their mistakes when they found they'd made some. And so it's a very different thought, very different mentality. They were a congregation, by the way. This wasn't a political movement that came to America. They were literally, they were a congregation. And what happened was, and if you lived anywhere in Europe back then, you had the state telling you what your religion is going to be. If you were in Spain or France, you're going to be a Catholic because what the king and queen say. If you live in Anglican, you're going to be an Anglican because that's what the king and queen say. As a matter of fact, at this point in time, Queen Elizabeth was queen, and the pastor of the Pilgrims, Pastor John Greenwood said, Jesus Christ is head of the Christian church. And Queen Elizabeth said, no, 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 I am. She executed him for saying that Jesus was head of the Christian church. So this is the kind of persecution they're facing in Europe. And so what happens is they decide, let's go elsewhere. And so here they're going to come to America. There's nothing over here for them to come to. They're coming brand new. They're all from Europe. They're not accustomed to anything that they're going to find in the New World. But their pastor, John Robinson, says, look, when you get there, he says, do not take with you the darkness of the old world. Take the Bible, let's start new. Let's not carry with us the darkness we've had. And they came over in 2 ships, or at least they were planning to come over in 2 ships, the Speedwell and the Mayflower. Turns out the Speedwell, they arrived there and they say, what are we going to do? And they say, well, one thing we need, the Bible's very clear. And they look at it and say, let's do the Hebrew Republic. Because you remember,
I can go on.
The guidance that was given to Moses.
I'll say this, that they spoke out against slavery, and that was a tale of two cities, if you want to say that. And I encourage you to go watch that. That's worth your watch. David Barton is called Plymouth versus Jamestown, King and Priest. That's the name of it. And you can go watch that, and it'll tell you the whole story of that very thing, because they didn't agree with slavery. So you have that tale of two cities. Jamestown is what the left is trying to define America as, and yet there was a whole nother story here. And I think the story was out of the North, especially the colonies, was the anti-slavery movement, and it was birthed out of that. And we saw ourselves pull ourselves out of that. Thank goodness for that. That's not who we are anymore. Don't receive that identity anymore. Okay, sorry to go so long on that one. But I want to just speak into where we are here on our 250th anniversary. Let's pray for all mankind to be free and have the liberties that they're all called to walk in. I thank God for this season. Now, as we move toward the midterms, we're in this dire straits right here, and we have 3 big weeks, because August is going to be a big month concerning the midterms as well. There's some things that I think some of the biggest battles that we're going to have, that President Trump, we need to be praying for. Number one is a resolution of the Iranian conflict with Israel and America. And we need to solve that and to move forward with that, and pray for him to have that ability to do that. Another one is securing Americans' elections. The Save America Act has passed the House multiple times, but it remains stalled in the Senate. Can't figure this one out. Other than some of the rhinos are worried about not getting reelected. They feel like if they vote for this, then they won't be reelected. I understand that's a legitimate worry, but this is one of those things that has to be done. The fact that I think I saw them interview somebody on the street, a liberal, excuse me, and said, you think you need an ID, to vote? No, we're American citizens. We shouldn't have to do that. Well, how do you prove you are? And then they ask the same person, how do you prove that you're a citizen? Well, you got to have an ID. It's like, then they caught themselves. Oh my gosh, I just said what I said you shouldn't say. So I think that's a big one. I think the corruption that's available when you have no ID. Let's pray for that to happen. Also, inflation, cost of living. Gas prices are coming down now. It's helping immigration and deportation. We have to continue to pray for that. Excuse me. And healthcare costs. I think that's another big one. Sorry, I had to cough there. But those are some big things we need to pray for. And here we are on our 250th anniversary. I think we made some great headways. And we want to remember what God did back then, he can do again. If God can rescue us from tyranny of what David Barton talked about the lack of freedom of religion, then I think this is the whole thing. He can do it. He can do it then. He can do it now. He can rescue us from what is happening. We are in a critical moment. I think a good moment. Wait and see. Listen to my podcast. I talk about that. Wait and see how it plays out. Don't judge it by where we are right now. God has a great plan for America, and He wants to restore us back to first place. Dutch Seed said this last weekend. I think it's very important for us to agree with it. He said the revival that's been in the womb of the intercessors is being birthed now. In other words, we've been carrying this baby for a long time of revival, and he believes the Lord is saying right now we're about to birth this child of revival. And revival is the answer to all the ills I've been talking about through this whole podcast. I mean, through this whole live stream today. So we can believe for that. Thank you for watching today. We'll be back here next Monday at 12 noon Central Time. Don't forget, at our ministry, we're just having live services on Sunday. Everything will be online. We'll have online Wednesday night as well. You can check us out there. Thanks for following us, subscribe, follow us. If you want to sow to this, you can go to our app, Christian Center Shreveport, our website, and then click down Pipeline there. You can sow to that or any other area you'd like to give. We'd be thankful for that. God bless you and have a great day. Happy Monday to everybody.